Hello and welcome to the Broadrun podcast. Today we've got a couple of special guests here, so I'll make the sort of no mess about with introductions. So we've got Hamish and Imogen here from Top Form Nutrition. So welcome.
Hi Blair.
Hello.
You all right?
Very good, how are you?
Very good, thanks. Imi?
Very good. I just wondering why Hamish found that so funny.
I don't know, I found it quite funny, sorry.
Yeah, so obviously this is the normal start of a podcast, so shout out to the sponsors. So we've got Precision Nutrition. No, we don't have any sponsors, but these guys are here. These guys are here to talk about all things nutrition. So I thought it'd be a little joke leading into it, as we like a joke. But basically, I want you guys to sort of introduce yourselves and then just obviously what Top Form Nutrition is.
So me and Hamish decided to create a free weekly newsletter about sports nutrition topics that we're interested in and we thought people would find useful. Mostly our friends that train and do events like running, triathlon, cycling. We're always like talking about it between ourselves and Googling it and learning, I suppose, and putting it into practice. So yeah, Hamish's idea actually to come up with a weekly newsletter that we write on Substack and then send out to our followers every week.
Yeah, I guess
Very nice.
From my side, I think the need came about that Imi's a qualified nutritionist, so I've benefited from speaking to a qualified nutritionist about sports nutrition and where it's like really helped me with all of my training and taking it quite seriously. So tried to share that info with other people, anyone who's interested.
When you were saying you were Googling and looking stuff up, did you find that the information was limited or was it gate kept, or what did you sort of find when you were looking? I imagine that you looked at other competitors and sort of seen what was out there, and what was the conclusion? Like, why? Obviously, you're saying you benefited from Imi being there, but it was like another reason thinking, try and get this knowledge across. So.
Most information comes out with an angle. So like if it's a company, if you go and look at specific sports nutrition related topics, they're always plugging a product, and a lot of the time that's not really what you need. Sifting through the misinformation is a big one.
Yeah.
There's a bias.
Yeah, you obviously see that with like different brands, not to slag them off because I don't want to get libelous or anything here, but you do see the brands have their like carb calculator and how much of their product they should have, and to do it. And I do think that the information just isn't generally readily available. And I think that it's something that probably people really like leave gains on the table from what I see from a coaching perspective, because the general person that picks up running or triathlon knows literally nothing about nutrition.
And I'd say those things out there are great, but what I think is really important as well is like actually understanding it yourself. So rather than just like being told what it is, learning about it and learning like so that you can adapt. And if I guess if you go really basic, like how many carbs per hour that you're meant to consume in a race, like you can be told because you put it into a calculator, but if you are racing and it starts to go Pete Tong, what do you actually do to you need to be able to know what you're doing so that you can fix it or address it on the fly as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, what came to my mind was I often think that people have heard it a million times and they don't need to hear it again. But I think with Hamish, like him asking me the same questions multiple times, or me seeing him doing something before a race where I'm like, why would you do that? Is a good example of like, and you're still interested in it when I tell you again. It's a good, now you've got it, but it's a good indicator for other people too. Like every time I race, I still will go on my Google Sheets and plan my nutrition out again and like double check, am I doing the right amount? When I've done it a million times. So I think the information is still relevant for people, and people that aren't into it or don't know much about it still need to hear it again, right? And in different
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's obviously, exactly different situations. Like, for example, if you guys are triathlon background, obviously I know you guys and know what you do, but just to let everyone else know, so you are triathlon background mainly, do other like sports, but for example, you would fuel differently the day before if you were doing an Olympic, or, I mean, stop me if I start talking wrong, but if you're doing an Olympic or you're doing a sprint or you're doing an Ironman, you would fuel that differently. or is that an incorrect statement?
Yeah, definitely.
Like the basis would be the same, but the volume would obviously be different. So completely right.
Yeah, so you just obviously alter it, but then it's good to go back over and double check the numbers about what you're doing. And I mean, it doesn't hurt to sort of, you've put a lot of time and effort into these things. So it's just, something that's worthwhile doing. I guess we have got a couple of questions here. I just want to touch on this that people have put in. And then I've also got questions myself just about some different things and what I've seen from people coaching. But I'll start off with like a fairly simple one. These things are just, they can be as detailed as whatever as you want to go in. But like, would you say you recommend people to train fasted? This is less racing, but this is more training. What do you reckon? This is a question I get a lot, by the way. This is why I'm asking it.
I always say no, and I also get it with my clients at the gym. Well, there could be some benefits, but I think any benefit would be outweighed by the fact that when you're training, if you've fueled properly, you're going to train better. And I think the training better element is more important. Like, if you have more energy to put into your session and also recovering well and then being able to train again the next day, I think that's always going to, in the long term, benefit you.
Have you, question to both of you, have you tried doing training fasted and have you tried doing training fueled? And have you found it, have you got personal experiences with that? Or is that just something you've found through literature and decided to apply, or just you've always applied it?
I used to not bother eating before training in the morning, like maybe 2 years ago. If I woke up early, I wouldn't ever. I think it's only once you're following, for me, only once you're following a plan where you're training every day, and you know you're training every day, or even multiple times a day, when you really start to, your life kind of shapes around your training, do you know what I mean? Then I think that's when your fueling is important. And even this week, because we're racing at the weekend, the training's gone down a little bit. I already don't feel the need to fuel as much. Even like yesterday, I went on a morning bike ride, but I'm like, oh, it's an easy bike ride. I'm not doing anything in the evening, whatever. But I know when I'm training, I'll always eat before. Do you? You do as well?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in fueling for it before. I have trained fasted. It was like Fat Max training. I go like a couple of weeks ago. Just read a bit about it and wanted to have a crack at it. Personally, it didn't feel much different, but it was probably later in the day. I was a bit more fatigued. I think it may come down to volume. I could be completely wrong here, but some of our weeks are sort of 15, 16-hour weeks. So to train a session, if you're fasting before a session, you're not just fasting before that session, but it's going to impact the session later in the day, and then later in the day, and then tomorrow as well. So it'll be the
recovery.
If you're doing 3 runs a week, then if you want to try, I can't really see them.
Yeah, it's more that continuous training thing where you wake up, your just body is constantly either needing a carb or trying to refuel. So I just think you can't go wrong with giving it what it wants. I mean, starts to fuel, you feel better, right? So I just don't know why you wouldn't fuel and feel better. It's not a hard thing to do.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's I think probably one of the main things that I say is just why not? Why wouldn't you just try that? Just give it a go. And once people say once you train fueled, you'll never train fasted again.
Yeah.
Once you start to feel it. And I think there's some interesting, I couldn't cite the papers for at the minute, but there's interesting data coming out about fat max adaptation, about if you do it while you're fueled, it actually has very little impact on how well you can do it, providing that you eat well throughout the rest of the day. So it's quite interesting that basically as your fitness goes up, your fat usage during exercise gets better anyway. So, as long as you're doing good training, you're progressing in the right sort of way, which I think is really interesting and be worthwhile. But even for me, just to look into those things a bit more. I just generally tell my athletes not to do it because with the injury risk that's proven with training fasted and not recovering and not fueling properly, it's always just not worth it. So I think that's a fair point. That's what I was going to say to you. This is just an off-the-cuff question. I was thinking while you're speaking, you're saying the body wants a carb. So I always get this question. I hate it. No, keto's out, right? Endurance, keto is out.
Very, I reckon any age group athlete, person, whatever, who's not professional, doesn't have a coach, would never do it right, obviously. It's a technical thing to do, so I don't even think
Yeah.
anyone should try it. I mean, maybe if you have a nutritionist and a coach and you're a professional, there could be some benefit, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess there was a lot of stuff about that. Like it wasn't so much recently. I think it was maybe a couple of years ago. Like endurance athletes talking about low carb, high fat training, especially during like base periods and off seasons and stuff for like fat adaptation. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure if you look across like the pro peloton, none of them are eating nuts and or none of the pro triathletes. I can't remember ever seeing them put raw milk or whatever heavy cream in their water bottle. So it's just
Yeah.
that was just what I was thinking there. But yeah, so you guys recently went and completed full distance Ironmans, correct?
It just broke up a little bit there.
So I was saying you've both recently just completed your first full distance Ironman. So talk me through that.
You go first.
Yeah, it was good fun. I think it was like, in terms of doing it, it was a bit of always a long-term goal, and it sort of came around a little bit quicker. We only started doing triathlon, I think 2 years ago.
Yeah.
2 years ago in October. And then we did the first 70.3 last year, and then the Copenhagen Ironman in summer. It was awesome. It was an amazing race. Shout out to Copenhagen. Shout out to Denmark. And it went well for both of us. I think obviously like the fueling side was like, for something like that, it is its own admin task in itself. Like you just can't wing it. Well, you could, and then the results could be detrimental. Like I guess not to like give a full race debrief, but like one thing that happened to me was I had a bit of a bonk at 90k on the bike just from under fueling, and like I knew what I had to do to get out of that. And like one of my big takeaways from the race was like being really stoked about how I recovered from that bonk, and that consisted of stopping at the midway aid station about 110k on the bike, and just banged loads of food, and was aware of like how much carbs I was having, and then aware of how I would adjust for the second half of the race to, I think I was originally at 100 grams an hour and then went up to like 120, 140. So then the next 90k was sort of playing through, or 70k at that point, was playing through, okay, I've had this much, this is another gel now, I need to have another gel now. And just, that wasn't blind. Like I knew how to get out of that. And then, I mean, it's a load of fucking gels that you have to eat, so it's just a bit mental for 10 and 11 hours just eating gels.
So would you say your food was predominantly that you took on, or calories in terms of carbs were taken on via gels?
Yeah, gels and carb mix on the bike. And then on the run, I was just scranning Bickies and Coca-Cola and banana and like anything that looked decent. And like it kind of went out the window a bit at that point, but I just knew what I needed to eat. And I think you're craving salty food. And then 5 pints afterwards for the recovery.
Well, yeah, that's always a necessary thing, just to make sure that you get your liquid carbs. What about you, Emmy? Like, I take it you had, like, I think they say everyone has a plan till they get punched in the face. And obviously you had your plan there, Hamish. Like, I take it your fueling plan was very regimented, Emmy?
Well, you got punched in the face.
Yeah, well, I fell off my bike at like, I don't know, 10 minutes in maybe, which threw me a bit. I did lose like a whole, cause like where I fell on my bike, my bottle just crumpled, and that was a whole hour of carbs because I had a liquid like powder mix. So that was like 90 grams straight away. But I actually hadn't planned on stopping too much at aid stations because I'm not very good at like grabbing the drinks and the gels. But so I ended up doing that instead, which was fine, and actually was quite good because I was grabbing Morton caffeine gels, and like I was like, okay, I felt quite shaken up by the whole like falling off. So I was like very aware that all I can do now is, in my head I was like, okay, all I can do is try and feel better, which was to me was eating. Like I was like, don't let this race go bad. Just keep eating. I was really scared about the marathon. I was like, maybe if I'm fueled enough by then, I'll feel okay. So I was really I had everything I'd had. I had liquid fuel, and I had those Striker, I don't know what they're called, 50 gram carb bars. I had 2 of them, and gels I was grabbing. And I felt pretty good. And then on the run, I definitely didn't feel that much on the run, but like I was walking every aid station. We both walked every aid station, walked through it. I was grabbing like a cup of electrolytes, a cup of Coke, every single time, which was like how long? How many Ks?
42. Oh no, every 4K.
Every 4K to stop and have water, Coke. It was quite a lot over a whole marathon.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I took a gel every now and then, but I just knew I didn't need it at that point. I was running pretty slow. I just needed to get through it. But at the beginning, it was really important the bike to come off and be like,
yeah, it's
well
cool.
done.
It's cool with the Ironman that like you obviously do a marathon at the end, and a marathon's a bit of an achievement in itself. And the bike is almost the fueling on the bike is not to fuel for the bike. It's to almost have you at like a good starting point for the marathon. So you kind of like are. When I say about bonking at like 110k, like that's not. I can then finish 70k more, but you're not finishing 70k more. You've then got another. For me, it was 4-hour run to do. So you want to be at zero almost, or just at like
baseline. Yeah.
Yeah, and you realise you're like, oh, it's like lunchtime now. So you're really, in a normal race, you kind of feel bad for like, not feel bad, but sometimes like, I don't really need this. I've just had breakfast. This is like a whole day, and it even makes you more aware that like I've missed meals now. I actually have to get this stuff.
Yeah.
The gel or whatever it is, and something to do. It's a bit of like a focus shift for me. It was like, okay, every half an hour, whatever it is, like it was making me like have control again of the race.
Yeah. No music, no headphones and music. So all you can do is count.
They call this raw dogging.
Yeah, raw dogging.
That actually comes on to a couple of questions, not raw dogging, but what you were just talking about there comes on to a couple of the questions that people have asked. So they have said, Ironman solid food versus gels. I mean, they've said what is better, but I mean, obviously, we don't want to just like polarize it and say one is better than the other. So what would you say to solid food? Obviously, Hamish, you said you're doing bickies and you're saying you're doing some bananas in the aid station. What would you say to that question? Like, would you incorporate solid food at possible? You're saying you've missed lunch. You're not going to have a burger and chips, obviously, but, you know, would you have something else?
I think on the bike, I'd try and stick to gels and carb mix, like purely because of like logistics almost. To like unwrap a big corny is what I was eating. Unwrapping that on the bike is mental. When you're going like 35 kilometers an hour, like it's just a bit of a faff. I did stop a few times. I'd stopped to go to the loo a few times, number ones. But like, yeah, logistically, just like the admin of eating solid food on the bike can be a bit of a nightmare. You also get the knock-on effects of like eating to like your performance. It has like quite a big delay. So like if you're doing like a hard set and then even like you're just drinking water, like the delay is bigger, but then the energy used to chew and to digest the food can have a bit of an impact. So I'd say for the bike, yeah, stick to the gels and the carb mix. And then for the run, whatever like looks good. I had one gel and I just could not have another one. Yeah, I could not face having any more fructose.
From a nutrition side of things, like I guess there's no fiber in a gel, right? Or low fiber. So would you say, like, I mean, people get like issues of runner's tummy all the time, and I mean, that normally comes from a marathon of 4 hours. Where you're doing a marathon of 4 hours plus you have another X hours on the bike and an hour and a half in the swim. So like, would you say that fiber and other foods like makes a difference? Like, obviously you're saying you were number ones, but I mean, you obviously hear issues of people having to go number twos. You know, what is that? Is that a consideration, or is it just like I'm in race mode, get the carbs in?
Well, I mean, like gels and sports products are made for digestion and like quick release of carbs and all the things that you need. That's why I think you're probably saying that you would try and get as much of that in on the bike, because the way your body digests it is going to be, although a lot of people do struggle with gels, it's the right mix and the right ratio to actually hopefully avoid those problems and also get digested the best way. So that's, I guess, the main consideration. If you were just taking your carbs from natural food or like your own mix or something like that, you wouldn't have that same ratio, so then you might get an issue. But I think everything that we did, we've practiced with. That's the main thing, because I think
I was going to say, yeah,
different. I mean, I just couldn't even. You're talking about food on the run, but I would never be able to eat food on the run. I mean, like maybe, but like there's just no need for me. I could more easily take a gel, and I think a lot of people, despite we didn't, would eat on real food on the bike. But I'm the same with Hamish, where that's just a faff. Like, you're carrying so much, you're thinking of things. Like, it's just so much easier to know that little gel is 30 grams versus carrying. I did have those 2 bars, but again, opening them is a nightmare. So like, I don't know how you get actual food unless if you take it slowly and you actually stop. Like, I think if you're just completing an Ironman, you would have a midway bag, which you're allowed to have, and have actual food and just stop. Like, that would be the best. But I think if you're racing a little bit, like, even though I'm not like going so fast on the bike, but it's just too much to think about if you want to try to focus on the race.
Yeah. No, that's fair.
I like sweets because
Sweets, yeah.
you could easily carry them if you drop them, if you lose them, whatever. But it's like an extra top up if you just want something to chew on.
Yeah. That's like also like that's really good points. I think like obviously just try and take in those extra little things. Sweets are probably going to be like top ups as opposed to actual, measured fuel sources, aren't they? So if you can try and get a couple of things, and if you can knock back a couple of great Gatorades as you go as well, that'll help get a few extra carbs in as well. So that does come on to a point which you mentioned about 5 minutes ago, which is you said you want to hit your carbs per hour. So what is your ideal number of carbs per hour, would you say? I mean, normally I would say for like runners, I normally say, research has shown now that anywhere of it's no longer 30 grams of carbs an hour. You can do anywhere between 60 and 90. And obviously that's what I say to my runners, if you can tolerate it. Would you say that is about right? Have I been, is it, or what would you say for your fueling? Would you say people should be aiming towards?
The main thing is how long the event is, and then that increases with how much you should be taking. So in like a triathlon sense, because it's what I can deal with timing wise, like for a sprint, it's going to be an hour and a half. So it's kind of questionable whether you really need to be fueling that, because your body should have enough glycogen stores to last you an hour and a half. But I'm just rather like err on the side of caution and have like one gel on the bike anyway. Just I feel mentally better, and you can take a caffeine gel, so it's a bit of a boost. So that's like 30 grams an hour, and then it just gets a bit higher. So Olympic, I'm saying 60, and then half Ironman, I'm saying 90, and then so on. Obviously, there's a limit, and no one will know what that limit is for them. But I think it'd be impressive if anybody could take like more than 120 grams, especially just doing it like without practicing.
Not professionally, yeah.
And also that's just a lot to manage and maintain and carry and everything like that. So, especially for running where it's even harder. I'm talking about a portion of this being on the bike where it's much easier generally to like digest. Being running and moving is harder. So, I mean, you probably know more than me, but like, don't marathon runners have quite limited? They do it more often and frequently, but they don't have that much carbs per hour.
Yeah, but they now do. So the recent
Really?
thing that's came out about like the guy who was the 100K race champion, like he's at 120 grams an hour now, and he tries to get to 150 grams an hour. But he, as like the marathon guys, they're so slight, they're not burning anywhere near as much as that. So they typically aim towards like 90, 100.
Yeah.
But they are having it all in liquid form. They're running past their bottles, and they're having it, say, every 20 minutes. They're taking on, their 30 grams. So it is little and often. And obviously, running has it's a lot more sort of sloshing about in your stomach compared to the bike. It's
weight as well, right? Your body weight would come into it quite a bit. So I'm a bit.
Yes. 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Like, me being about 90 kilos. So the weekend, I'll probably have one of those, thanks to the sponsor, Precision Hydration, one of those 90-gram gels in the first hour, and then rely on stuff on course. So they do that really nice 90-gram pouch, which I think I've done for an hour run before, and has like done me really well.
So many things, like you could do 30 and you might feel okay. Like, it's the intensity, the importance of the race for you as well. Like the Olympic I just did, it was kind of important to me, but like, I didn't want to carb load for 2 days for it, because it was just like more of a training day versus the T100. If it's an important race for you, then you're going to put everything into it. You're going to carb load. You're going to do the top end of the carbs that you can. Like, you're doing everything you want to feel your best. And I think that's another mistake. People that are like going to race at a low intensity and it's not that important to them. Do you need to carb load for 3 days? Probably not. Actually, probably makes you feel worse.
Yeah.
So there's so many factors. You
can always top up if you're going a bit under, and if you're flagging, you can always add more in. But like, if you go over the line, and like you said, Blair, if you then your stomach flips, you can't really recover from that. It's really hard to. So yeah, erring on the side of caution is probably the better approach.
Trial and
Oh.
error.
And you want to practice that. That's a key point. You want to practice
Yeah,
that in training. I think a lot of the mistakes that I see people make, and maybe you have seen other people in triathlon make, is they get to race week and decide, I need to start fueling now. I need to practice this race fueling. Whereas if they have a consistent fueling approach to all their training rides, they should know what time they're taking it, when they're doing it. I always trying to get my runners to set on their Garmin, have their different alerts. You can set it to say anything you want. Take this, take that, take this at the certain periods in the race. It's always worthwhile doing it. So
100%.
I think that's
100%.
so it is race week. It's T100, as you mentioned, T100 final in Dubai. We're super excited. All three of us are racing in this event. So people will be watching this on today, which is Wednesday. The race is on Sunday. So, like, if you were going to talk to an athlete that's going to do the T100, how would you fuel a T100? Would you fuel it like a 70.3? What are we saying as general rules? You don't have to get into specificity of individual people.
Set 70.3, and like it's a good chance to like try and go slightly above your 70.3 paces. It's a bit shorter. Gun it like that, no?
Yeah, but he means the fueling of it.
Yeah, so if you're
Yeah.
So
I'd
if
probably
you're
say, like, what race have you done before? Like, I think most people would have done at least a triathlon of some form. And if they've done an Olympic before, I'd be like, okay, so what did you do for that? What did you feel for that? If that went okay, then you'd increase the carbs from that a little bit.
double it.
And no, you wouldn't double it. And then if you did a half Ironman, if you did, like, I'm sure a lot of people have done a half Ironman before. If they're doing T100, same situation. What carbs did you do for that? And then make the adjustment. If they've not done any carbs, no trialing of it at all in training, I think I'd say 60 grams. Just if they were maybe 60 grams, maybe 30 grams if they were like a smaller female, and
They can reach out to us and then we can share.
Yeah, obviously that's what I mean. It's like general advice. I mean, I'm sure the questions will come in after this of saying people want specific advice to them, and obviously they can get that from their coaches or get it through the Top Form Nutrition newsletter, or reach out to the Top Form Instagram. I'm sure you guys will be more than happy to help people out, but it's just obviously people have lots of questions on what to do. I mean, I hope they're not getting to Wednesday of race day and asking questions like, what should I eat? I imagine if they've been doing serious volume training, they've probably been fueling anyway. So
When does the load start?
that's my next question. Thank you.
Well, normally it should be with it 48 hours out at a minimum.
Okay.
If you're doing it just the day before, you've not actually been able to store enough glycogen. You might feel good on race day because you have more carbs than usual, but it's not the actual protocol. It's mixed. It's very mixed. But I personally am going to do 2 days.
So Friday.
So Friday, Saturday, personally.
So Thursday.
I've done, for half Ironman before, I've done Thursday, Friday. I've done 3 days and felt pretty crap by the third day. So I'm going to try a different approach and do 2 higher days for me.
I love a
So
carb.
you love a carb load.
I love a carb.
Yeah.
So I'll start tomorrow.
So like I probably would say that, like, hands up, I really struggled with my nutrition previously, and like I fueled races terribly. And I obviously massively benefited from like you guys' knowledge. So like, thank you very much. But like, you gave me a really helpful tip in terms of my calculation for pre-carb calculations. So like, I don't know if you want to talk a bit about that, about what you sort of say is general advice. You've given me that advice, but also for, say, the 2 days before, what you sort of look to sort of take in terms of grams per kilogram, etc. As your sort of general, again, this is just general advice.
Yeah, most consistently when I like research this and the kind of I follow from books and things like that is 8 to 10 grams per kilogram, which is really high.
Per day.
Per day. So if you're doing 10 times, 10 is just an easy calculation. So how much do you weigh?
90.
So it's 900 grams of carbs. It's a lot of carbs, but that is what the advice does actually say. I treat that as like, that is your 100% priority race. You care, like, you're racing, like, that's what I would do for the biggest thing of the year. For me, 10 grams.
A goal.
Too much. Yeah, it's just too much. I would always go lower. more towards
I
that.
think that's I think that's important. Like what you're saying is you've trialed probably 10 and you know how that makes you feel,
Yeah.
but you know that is like a baseline to have that rough advice of
Yeah.
8 to 10 so you can try it again.
Yeah, and what I'll do is, because also it's over more than one day, so I've done
Mm-hmm.
this before where I've gone for 6 grams for the first day and then gone
Mm-hmm.
up the next day, or vice versa, where I've gone to 10 and then I've gone, okay, I can't do another day of this, I'll go down to 8. So I just feel like over the hours before the race, you've at least gotten somewhere around that. But it, like, I guess the important thing is just that like 5 grams per kilo body weight is too low. So like if
Yeah, yeah.
you're carb loading and you just had a bowl of pasta and it's been like you've done 200 grams of carbs that you haven't even carb loaded.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd,
You
I'd,
think you have, but you've not. Sorry.
no, I'd just say as well that, like, from someone who doesn't really read the back of packets particularly well on food, like sometimes when you think you're carb loading, you might actually just be eating stuff which is like full of fat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So like I love a big packet of Hobnobs biscuits, but actually the fat content where they're like oats is actually quite high. So
Yeah.
it's a
Hamish
bit.
is
Turns out they're made with quite a lot of butter.
Yeah, exactly. So make sure it's actually carbs rather than.
Yeah, so like I probably can say an example of like last week I was eating potato chips. This was through like I wasn't actively carb. It was the day 2 days before the race, but I was eating them, and part of me thought in my head, "Well, I guess this is carbs," but it's not really, is it? It's probably majority fat, and I mean, no one would be surprised to hear that. I just thought it would be funny to say that I
yeah.
did that,
Hamish,
but
I get annoyed. I come home and like Hamish is eating chicken. I'm like, no chicken. Like you can't. Like it's
yeah,
carbs only for 2 days, because he's like, you can't get out of your head that you shouldn't eat protein, really, do you? And then you
that that
blame like chocolate on carbs. I'm like, there's some carbs in it, but like I think if you really want to hit that higher end, 8 to 10 grams, and you don't want to feel terrible, you've got to be so careful. Like I have to really plan it out, because I've done it before where you end up eating double my calories just to get the
yeah,
protein.
yeah. Especially if you include meats and high
Yeah,
fats foods,
I
it's
just
pretty
really
easy.
minimise, especially the fat, because that is what makes you feel the worst.
I think I've been like implementing that for probably the last year, where the day before the race, I will pretty much just eat vegetarian, which is like all my favorite foods anyway, like pasta, pizza, rice, things like that. I always like a little rice pudding, which is pretty delicious and homemade and cheap, so it's pretty good. And yeah, if you can just reduce, obviously it's helps your stomach, right? You don't have to digest heavy meat products and stuff. It can help.
I think one other thing is like, how much carbs do you generally eat? Because, some people, I say female, but that's a big assumption, but don't actually eat that many carbs in their day to day. Like people are scared, they just eat salads or meat and things like that. So to then make them go carb load is like very extreme. So I think all this stuff is in consideration. And I also think the more you train with carbs, like now I wake up if it's 5 a.m, I'll still have bread, English muffin, cereal. The more your body is like used to carbs, so I almost feel like the training with carbs also helps the racing and the fueling and the carb loading too, because I feel like you then crave it and you digest it really well.
Shout out Waitrose.
Way more like.
I was just gonna say, you guys sponsored by English muffins.
Yeah.
That's what next sponsorship you need to get. Waitrose English muffins.
Spinnies,
If anyone,
Spinnies /
oh
Waitrose.
spinnies,
Any, not fussy, but
as long as it comes in English muffin form, you're okay.
Yeah.
there's always some English muffins in the cupboard.
That's we love it here. Like definitely rep the sort of the English muffin, getting the carbs in before training. I guess it's obviously been like taking a lot of your time. I appreciate you taking the time here. I've got one last question. Is that people had sort of asked. The question came across as like, I see people drinking Pocari Sweat. Is that acceptable as an electrolyte and carb source? But I guess I want to generalize it a bit more. In like, people always ask me how many electrolytes. It seems like everybody cares about electrolytes. Nobody cares about water. Nobody cares about anything else. What about electrolyte consumption? Do you give any general advice on that?
Pocari Sweat is an interesting one, because I do pick it up every now and then. It's a good option if you haven't got say you haven't got anything else, you haven't got other sources, because it does have carbs and it does have some electrolytes in it.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing with the Pocari Sweat is that we discovered this, is that it seems to be that in every single bottle or can is a different ingredients and a different even if you go online and like search Pocari Sweat, like it's very hard to find out exactly what's in it, and it's not it doesn't seem to be consistent. So for that way, I'm like a bit worried about it and skeptical. Like I don't really know what I'm getting in when I have it. But I think if you came across it at the shop or you're on a bike ride, then yes, it's sugar in it. It's definitely got some salts in.
So it's a good emergency,
Yeah,
perhaps.
I wouldn't.
So what would you suggest would be the go-to, like, not brand per se, but do you have any rough rules on electrolytes? I know it's not exactly nutrition, but it comes under the sort of bracket of like training for endurance, you know.
Yeah, there's obviously a few. I think a lot of the over-the-shelf ones are very low. So Precision Hydration does a 1,000 milligram and a 1,500 milligram, which, like, if you look at Sunshine Nutrition, which is just shot bought,
My favorite.
your favorite is like 250. So like
On that, we're talking milligrams of sodium here, right?
So the difference is huge. So you're having 4 tablets of Sunshine Nutrition, which on the back of the packet it says don't have more than 2 a day, to one of these Precision Hydration ones. So I'll probably, for like race specific, have 2 or 3 bottles on the bike, and each one of those will have 1,000 milligrams of sodium. I am a salty sweater and I do cramp quite quickly. So that again goes back to practice and trial, but like I've found 1,000 milligrams in these conditions in Dubai as well are pretty spot on. Any ride I do, I'll probably try and aim to have 500 milligrams of sodium.
I believe that they say if you have too many grams of sodium, providing you obviously don't have gastro distress, the rest of it you'll just simply weigh out. Like, it's very hard to sort of overdose. And as well, when you're overdosing, you're probably it's probably, you know, you're going to do it, you know. I think the typical sweat ranges anywhere between like losses of 750 to 1,500, unless you go get a specific sweat test, like a specific sweat test that tells you your exact point. I think you probably good aiming at 1,000 milligrams. Would you say?
I think depending on the race, if it's like hot and
For a big fella.
Yeah. I think the good thing about electrolytes and like knowing how much to have and whatever is that you'll find out. Like if you cramp, you probably don't have enough electrolytes, you have enough salt, and if you have no issues, you're probably okay. I think.
Yeah.
I think just because Dubai is so hot and sweaty, I always use the Sunshine ones in my bottle for a bike. Not very high, but I don't have any other issues, and it seems to be enough. And I think if I had symptoms like I was headachy or I felt a bit weak, even though I had enough carbs and all that things, then maybe I would think, okay, top it up. But I think normally if you have enough water, you're going to be okay. It's probably the water is more key, and I think the electrolyte thing is like on top of that.
Yeah, and those symptoms could be later in the day as well. They're not like immediate things that come up, but if you're feeling a bit shit later in the day, like that could be because of your morning run or ride where you were really low on electrolytes. It might not be the immediate performance in the activity, rather repercussions.
I think it's also really similar to what we said about the carbs, in that like we're not sure exactly about the timing, but we're always around the carbs. Like, you know, you're having carbs at dinner the night before training, you're having a bit before you train, you're having some in your breakfast. If you're just always topped up, I think it's the same with the electrolytes. Like when we're training consistently, we're having a bottle in the morning in our bike or run with electrolytes in. Throughout the day, we're drinking water, and then the next day we're doing it again. So I don't think you ever get so low. I can kind of imagine some people just like do a huge run one weekend and don't even think about it, you know? But I think you're just constantly a little bit on top of it. And also salt in food. I have quite a lot of salt in food. I'm quite conscious of that, and I think that helps.
Proactive salt consumption.
Yeah.
Because
in races, I would definitely have what Hamish said about a product like Precision, where I know like it's actually got 1,000 milligrams in. I'm a bit more on it.
Yeah. Because I'm very aware that I've taken a lot of your time here, I want to just touch on one last thing, which is water, what you mentioned. And this is I'll just give a generalization of what I tell people to do for the training. As I normally say, what you want to do is you'll never be able to replace the water you drink, as it's very difficult, especially when you're on the bike and you can't carry that much. So what I normally say is weigh yourself during a race specific output for an hour. take your weight before, take your weight after, and then find out how much weight you've lost, which will be water weight. And then from there, you want to try and, that's how much you've lost. So you don't want to drink any more than that. Would you say that's a good general advice for people taking on water? Or would you say just more generally drink to thirst? Do you have a solution for that or a tactic?
I think that's useful if they can actually do that. Like if they can actually conduct that in a race, then that's really useful. That I would like on in a race just be sipping your water. I mean, it's more like how much. It's the same with the carbs, water per hour, and a ballpark figure is like a litre an hour. And you'll know after a race if you haven't needed a wee, and hours after the race that you didn't have enough water, and then you just need to hydrate yourself again. Very impossible in hot climates, right? Like how much we sweat in training in here in summer. It's actually I think that's the whole reason why we feel bad.
I can testify after getting kidney stones last year that it's probably a good idea to drink slightly more water, especially if you're training in Dubai, because you don't want to.
My bout with rhabdo.
Yeah. So as a PSA, generally just try to drink more water, and I think as well you can probably drink more water throughout days off, and like you say, keep yourself hydrated throughout the day. You don't necessarily need to be banging 1,000 milligrams of sodium other times, just as long as you're actually drinking water to allow your kidneys to function and not get rhabdo, then that would be ideal.
Yeah, and then the night before and the days before races, you should also already be increasing your water. You can store water like the same way. Water, electrolytes, those things do matter the day before a race as well.
Like a camel?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's. I think that's been super interesting, though. That I really do appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully people have got lots of information, especially ahead of this weekend. And then they'll be able to give you a shout out on Top Form Nutrition, where they'll be able to sign up to your weekly newsletter. We've had some great articles talking about dates for carbs. We've had articles, sticky little pocket rockets, talking about gels. And we've had, what was the latest one? Can you please remind me? Macros and micros, yeah. So that's been really interesting. Obviously, it comes directly to your mailbox, which is decent and normally gives you an excuse. It looks like you're reading your work emails on a Monday morning, but in fact, you're reading about triathlon stuff and running things, which is what we all really care about, not working. But yeah, thank you very much to both of you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Thank you.